Hello everyone, it's Howard here with the fourth one of my casual philosophy video series. Today I'm going to talk about what I call double victimization. Two quick notes about that. First of all, which is that I use this term differently than what I saw when I looked up on Google, so no cheating, don't go and try to look there. And second of all, some people may respond fairly negatively to the ideas that I express here, particularly people who have suffered through some sort of intimate partner violence or something of the like. I just want to give a disclaimer that I don't think anybody is obligated to think through things in the way that I am going to present them, and that I fall short of it myself at times, but nonetheless, this is what I try to do. So now that I have that disclaimer out of the way so that nobody sues me, let me try to explain what I mean by this phrase by asking a question, which is, how do we think about people who do things we consider to be wrong, or morally impermissible? Now, this can range from something fairly minor, such as when somebody dings your car while you're out driving, to things that are more moderate, such as lying or stealing, to things on the really egregious end of the scale, such as intimate partner violence, as I mentioned before, or hate crime, or murder, things of the like. Now, the first point is typically in order for us to think something is wrong, or rationally accept that something is wrong, we have to feel emotionally that it is wrong as well. This is why it's so easy for us to go from somebody did something bad to they are a bad person. An example to try and bring this out is, imagine somebody that you don't know very well, not emotionally connected to, and imagine that the only thing you knew about them is that they did something you considered to be morally impermissible. In all likelihood, you'd probably feel some sort of negativity towards that person, which is completely natural. It's an easy way for us to evaluate those circumstances and to justify our thoughts. Now, even though I'm making kind of a distinction here between feelings and thoughts, you should probably be feeling that they're not all that separable, and I intend to keep things fuzzy like that. Nonetheless, let me ask, what is a way of seeing or orienting ourselves towards these situations that will change our feelings and also our thoughts and trains of reasoning about them? So the idea that I have is something that is already expressed in numerous ways by various religions, indigenous faiths, certain liberal policies, and even some philosophical positions. This is only my particular practical-oriented way of stating it. So the model that I tend to use is that whenever somebody does something that we consider to be wrong, I consider it to be a double victimization. Not just of the obvious or typical victim that we all know and accept, but also of the person who did it themselves. So, the perpetrator. Now, this should immediately make most people feel uncomfortable, because it sounds or suggests like I'm trying to say you should empathize with the perpetrator, but as I said before, typically when somebody does something wrong, you have to feel negatively towards them as well, so it just makes it confusing what it is that I'm exactly asking you right now, which is perfectly fine. So let me ask a further question to explain what I mean, and this is gonna get to the crux of my argument. What is it that had to have happened to the person to bring them to this point? Particularly in the case of egregious wrongdoings, what is the world that this person lives in that allows them to do these things and either not feel regret about it, or maybe they do feel regret about it, or maybe that's just not even a relevant question to ask, but nonetheless, they can do actions like this that we consider to be so wrong. Well, what would it take for you to do those actions? Consider some sort of action that you consider to be close to or past your threshold for forgiveness, and imagine what would it take for you to perpetrate one of those crimes. Assuming in this example that you can do those crimes, if you have limitations that would actually prevent you from doing it, choose another example. And also, no cheating here in saying, well, obviously I would never do something like that, because that's the exact assumption that I'm trying to challenge right now, and that does close off some of the avenues for understanding the people who do. So, Alright, you've thought about whatever this wrongdoing is and whatever it would take for you to do it. Now, recognize that that is exactly what happened to the people in question, or the perpetrator who did this something wrong. Whatever that thing is that would prey upon your vulnerabilities or would shatter your current worldview, that would allow you to do things that are currently not congruent or stepping outside of the bounds of it. This is what happened or befell this other person. Okay, so a couple of consequences of thinking through these things, which is, one, hopefully putting something that way already should have already changed the way that you feel about it, which is already a marked improvement and is going to change your train of thought or rational thinkings about the situation. Number two, I actually have not said anything at this point about anything that we should consider to be morally wrong or impermissible, or what to do about it. Intimate partner violence, hate crimes, murder, theft, lying. I have not weighed in on any of those or what to actually do about those. I'm speaking before we even get to the level of being able to articulate or being able to think about what the consequences should be of some actions, of how to frame or orient or how we engage with it. And this is a situation that we all find ourselves in, whether we're aware of it or not, but tends to take a bit of a backseat or not be problematized as much. Now, a very interesting note is that likely when you gave your explanations for yourself, you probably thought of some intense things that would be required for you or this perpetrator to do something that's wrong. Something like early childhood trauma or some sort of negative mental health diagnoses. Now, first of all, this is actually kind of a biased way of thinking about it because people with mental health diagnoses don't necessarily go around and harm people at all. But the other thing is that's also uncomfortable is that some of the reasons for why people do things they do can also be very banal. And this is particularly hurtful for us because when the consequences of their actions had such hurtful negative impacts for us, we want to feel like there was a similar cause for it as well, even when that isn't necessarily the case. So to take an example, well, not in the moral realm, but imagine a horrific car crash being caused by engine failure. Now, it's a horrific after effect, but for a completely banal reason, and I will argue that people work in the exact same way. However, this is a question that would probably be better suited for a psychologist to take up than myself. And lastly, and certainly not least, perhaps most importantly, it is obviously impossible to accept the line of reasoning that I've put forth so far and not see yourself in the other person and the other person in yourself. I'm trying to blur the lines between the two, and that was kind of a paraphrase of Levinas, seeing yourself in the other and the other and in yourself. But this is just to make it conscious of what we're drawing upon when we relate ourselves to another person or to people who do these things. And by drawing these things out to be conscious and to actually be able to articulate them, that will change your frame of reference of what you consider to be permissible lines of reasoning on how to think about these things, and it will also change your feelings about it as well. So that's the idea. Hopefully you all enjoyed it, and this was less philosophically intense than my last video, but as a little bonus homework assignment, go watch that Heidegger video and think about how what I said there fits in with the things that I've presented here. So hopefully you all enjoyed it, and if you want to discuss it, leave me some comments. Alright, thanks everybody. See you next time.